Okay, so you're doing okay? Oh, okay. Well, let's hang in there. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. It is 7:04 p.m. Tuesday, January the 18th, 2022. Welcome to week number three. Three, that number. We're halfway through at the end of this week of this course. Well, actually over because it's a 5.5 course. As you know, the course will end on a Tuesday. So we're coming up on the point where we're going to be having um, 2 lectures in 1 week, but that'll be in week 5. So we got at least 2 more to go before that. But it comes pretty fast. And so one of the things that I do want to remind my students, and you guys in this course should know, and I'm surprised to see a few people who did it. When you write your papers, make sure you pay attention to the rubric. A few people missed some things that I thought that they would miss. And number one, citations in the body. There were people who wrote good content, but if you didn't have citations in the body, you already know how I feel about that. You already know the rules on that, and that's pretty much what the school does. Is citations in the body and references at the end. And so a few people didn't do that, and I was surprised when I saw it. So I thought I'd uh, reiterate and mention it. Is that always citations in the body and references at the end, cover page and also a um, reference page as well. Um, and then if it says 2 pages, it shouldn't be 1 3/4. It should be 2 complete pages. You can go over that. I don't mind. But some students um, miss that point. And so I just thought I would start out tonight by reiterating and reminding everybody that it is very, 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 very important. Okay. En español, muy importante. Yes, one of my friends reminded me. So let's share my screen. Go into week number 3. And, we have the message page. We have discussions. So let's look at the calendar right quick. Starting out with the month version. You know how I like to see the month view. And to remind you, this is where we are, the 18th. And your initial post is due tonight. Of course, today is the lecture. Your reply post is due Saturday. And then the 23rd, your written assignment and your key phrase or word is due. Very important. And then you begin to see that we will be, after next week's lecture, we will be in the month of February. As you can see there. And that in week 5, we'll of course have our lecture here, and then we'll have another one that Thursday because the course ends that following week, the 8th. So we're getting eminently there. Also, one other thing that you should be aware of is that at the end of this week, which is the 23rd, I will not be accepting assignments from weeks 1 to 3. Now, if you have already made arrangements to let me know there were some issues, then I will take them, but I will not deduct points. But if no one's reached out to me, you know my rule about extenuating circumstances, and it's important that you don't just email me, but text me or call me so that we can get a handle on it. So, because like I said again, when we get to the 8th, when we get there, that is it. I don't care if your paper is perfect and it's 12 o'clock, which would be the 9th. I can't take it. I cannot take it. So I suggest students don't wait till the very last minute to get that last weekend. Okay. So that's the calendar. So let's go back. Let's look at the announcement for this week. Week 3. So we're dealing with one of the areas that I think is so important, and that's professional communication skills. I think that this is a tool that every criminal justice professional needs to be very proficient in. As we talked about during week 1, open house, written communication, oral communication is so important. And so we're going to deal with the issues of verbal and nonverbal communication, communication barriers, and important written communication. And then you see when the lecture is, and you see the discussion assignment is professional writing. And then, of course, I already told you that initial post is due tonight and the reply post Saturday. And then finally, your written assignment infographic, which, as you know, should be and must be in the form of a Word document. We will discuss that in a few minutes. And that is due Sunday. And then you know my motto, adversity is a springboard to success. You well know about that. Okay. Let's jump off into the module. And let's first look at infographic, the written assignment. And I'm going to explain that to you. And so you're going to read this paragraph, these words, and in a Word document, analyze the Fourth and Fifth Amendment, which deals with due process and protection against unreasonable search and seizures and interrogations. As you know, the Fourth Amendment is search and seizures, and the Fifth Amendment is interrogations. Leading cases in the Fourth Amendment are Terry versus Ohio and several others. But the Fifth Amendment, the leading case is good old Miranda versus Arizona. And so it says it may limit the efforts of law enforcement, but also discuss why they're important. What it does is it forces law enforcement to obey the Constitution and protect the rights of citizens as they do their job. Compare the advantages and disadvantages of the rights, determine whether you think the rights are reasonable or unduly limit justice for victims. I always caution people whenever they reach the stage of saying that it unduly limits justice for victims is you could find yourself in a situation where you are charged and you will be glad that you have those rights. I've had law enforcement people that I represented who, during my years of practicing law as a defense lawyer, where they were prosecuted, but I was defending them, and thank God we had the Fourth and Fifth Amendments. So you're going to create an infographic or a chart showing both sides of the rights afforded by the Fourth and Fifth Amendment. And submit your completed assignment in a Word document with a cover page with citations in the body and references at the end. Please, when you cite cases, cite the entire case appropriately. You know what I mean, because I've expressed that enough. That would be, for example, I'll just throw a number out. Miranda versus Arizona, 385 U.S. number 1, in parentheses, the year 1963. I think it's 63 or 60. Anyway, that was hypothetical. So I was just telling you how it needs to be done. Very important that you do that. Here is the rubric. Clear and comprehensive analysis of how the Fourth and Fifth Amendment may limit the efforts of law enforcement. You can't do this assignment without citing the Supreme Court cases. You really can't. The importance of Fourth and Fifth Amendments. Why are they so important? Advantages and disadvantages. Compare the advantages, disadvantages of them. And then the infographic or chart showing both sides by the Fourth and the Fifth Amendment, clear and comprehensive. Notice that if you get over here, you're not very clear. If you don't cite cases, you must cite cases. You must, I'll just put it this way, in order to probably meet this, and cite the cases appropriately. If you don't remember how to cite the cases, I will hit them along with tonight's lecture. So, and then of course the cover page, and then the reference page. How long does it need to be? Long enough to satisfy all of the requirements of each section. So it shouldn't be a half a page, and it should be written so that if a person doesn't know anything about the issues of the Fourth Amendment and how it works, you should have adequately provided how it works. What are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? What are some of the challenges that are involved as well? Any questions? Okay. All right. It's a pretty straightforward assignment, and this is an area that you guys should be familiar with at this junction, because as I said, this is a survey course, and what we're doing is we're going over things that you have probably learned from being in my classes in the past. All right. The discussion is about professional writing. In a post of at least 250 words, discuss the importance of writing concise, factual, professional, and unbiased. I talked about this quite a bit. Discuss the likely outcome of a justice professional, whether it's a probation officer, parole officer, police officer, submitting written documentation that has incorrect, incomplete information. Research and cite at least one source in your post. Remember, I don't hold you to that, but that's okay. I appreciate it when you do. It means that you are in the habit of supporting your statements, which is what you should be at this particular juncture of your education. And then respond to a peer's post. That would be by Saturday, 11:59 p.m. Remember, you must post first before you can see anything, okay? All right. And then the live classroom recording will be right here. As I take this out and add the link that goes in here, and you will see that. And then I also email you the link, but if you're here, Jennifer has a head up on that. By being here, you'll be able to have that. Of course, that key phrase or word is going to be due by Sunday at 11:59 p.m. and you know how to drop it down, okay, and get it in there to get 5 points. So let's talk about these issues. I think that you shouldn't be aware that this whole lecture tonight is all about showing how professional you are. And even one small error can result in a case being dismissed. So we talk about written communication. Remember, even your notes that you take, your notes that you take before you do a report. And now reports are done on computers. Before they were typed in regular typewriters. But it is important that you spend adequate amount of time recognizing that your report could be an exhibit and probably will be an exhibit in a court of law. I have had police officers write reports with information such as, and I think I've shared with you guys this before, my famous case that I won when my client was charged with committing an offense on April 31st, the famous April 31st decision. And that was in the police report. It was actually the statement that was given by the individual who the police officer was interviewing, and they wrote just what they said. Rather than when they questioned that individual and they gave them that, they should have realized the possibility of what that could mean to their case. And so what happened is that ended up being the testimony on the stand as I cross-examined the police officer about the report. It happened to be the testimony of the complaining witness, the main one who identified my client as the person who committed the offense on April 31st. And so the case went all the way through till I got to closing argument. And when I got to closing argument, I stood up to do my closing argument and I said, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it is quite clear that the people who testified on for the state, the law enforcement, as well as the victim, that they have the wrong guy and that they're wrong about what they said and how it happened. Well, first of all, they said that was April 31st. And so I said, when I was a kid, and when I started to say that, the prosecutor jumped up and he objected. Objection, Your Honor. Counsel was going to include what happened to him when he was a kid. It was not relevant to the case. The judge says, have a seat, sir. I think I know where he's going. So I said, when the judge sustained it and told him to be quiet, I said, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, and I was facing the jury and looking right at them. And then I turned and said, and counsel. I was rubbing it in. I says, when I was a kid, my grandmother taught me a poem. And the poem went like this. It went 30 days had September, April, June, and November. April. All the rest have 31 except the month of February. And the jury all knew. Everybody knew. The prosecution knew what I was doing. Everybody knew. So I said it's not possible. Beyond a reasonable doubt, you can find my client guilty of nothing because they got a date that doesn't exist, which they were wrong on that, and they're wrong on the guy they got. And I said a few more things, but that was my main emphasis. So the prosecution gets up and says, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, do not be misled by a minor mistake. Man, that was like the sunlight coming in a cloudy day. They admitted that there was a mistake. And you know, if you got to prove a person guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, prosecution, you put your foot right in the middle of it. It's like a big dog mess, and you put your foot right smack dab in the middle of it. You know it's going to stick to your shoes. Well, that's what happened here. And the jury came back and said that they didn't believe that the prosecution met their burden because they had some doubts about it. And they said they really, and they were very consistent. They were argumentative to me, by the way, when I was cross-examining about trying to make sure that that was the date. But I read the report, ladies and gentlemen. I read the report. It was there. And the officer couldn't dispute it. And the officer's eyes got kind of big when he realized that. And he was nervous. The point I'm saying is that it cost them the case. So that's just an example. A time on there can be something that caused them. I've used even things like lowercase I standing alone, not to prove that the person wasn't telling the truth, but to make the um, person on the stand who is testifying feel uncomfortable because everybody knows I stands alone is always capitalized, whether it's the beginning, middle, or end of a sentence. But uh, the officer had to say, well, I think I made a mistake and lifted up my finger. And as soon as I hear that word, you see what it says here in this little piece? It says, any mistake can make the officer appear incompetent and the officer's credibility being questioned. I don't care how little it is. Remember one thing about defense attorneys. We don't try to do knockouts. We do sometimes, but we most of the time do jabs, you know, score points, jabbing. And when we can get a knockout, that was a knockout, the one I told you earlier. But when we get little jabs in, when uh, we can get you on the stand, whether you're the primary witness, the victim, or either the law enforcement or whomever, and we are able to impeach you the way that they did in My Cousin Vinny, the way it was done in Legally Blonde, to demonstrate that that person either was not telling the truth or either didn't put their best foot forward. So it is important. This last paragraph lays it all out in summary about the written part. Written documentation is paramount to any criminal justice, any career in criminal justice, because it is the function that recaptures an incident for the judge or jury or the trier of fact. Every criminal justice professional, from a probation officer, parole officer, corrections officer, and police, as well as administrative staff, are expected to understand the rules of effective written communication. Written documentation is the foundation for which judges and jurors make decisions about defendants' freedom and must therefore be factual, accurate, unbiased, and professional. Factual, accurate, unbiased, and professional. Very much important. By the way, I'm kind of preparing you guys for that kind of thing by the way that I grade your papers. Same thing. And we're not picking on you. And one student said to me, well, this is not a grammar class, so why are you so dogmatic on it? Well, I just explained a few minutes ago why. And the student said, oh, my bad, I got it. Yeah. So when you get out there and you're a professional, you'll be glad you did. So now we have interpersonal communication, which includes verbal and written communication, because you're communicating ideas and information. You're communicating between yourself and other individuals. And again, in both written documents and information presented orally could impact the freedom of an individual. Therefore, the writing must be truthful, accurate, and free of errors. We do that as defense attorneys as well. So let's talk about effective communication skills, being able to not just sit down, but being able to understand and operate what we call active listening. A student told me once that they listened to my lectures while doing their laundry. And I said to them, you can't do that. That's not good. You shouldn't be doing other things. You shouldn't have anything take away from what you're listening to. Active listening means you're not trying to multitask, but you're focusing on what the individual is trying to communicate to you. And so it's important to keep your mind focused on it, understand where the speaker is coming from, operate in an empathetic, and then ask questions if necessary. Professional communication, says, begins with being able to interact with others on one-on-one, face-to-face, then pulling from that interaction all the information you need to write about. So, and it should be clear, it should be concise, to the point, so that you can have the details, so that a person can tell the story. I am very good at that. I have a gift of photographic memory, but I have been gifted with the ability to be able to communicate. That's why I've done well in radio, television, public speaking, and doing my sermons, lectures as well. Just talking to individuals about things. It is important too to be able to learn how to take cogent notes. And like I said, mistakes make you vulnerable to defense attorneys who use them to plant mistrust in the mind of the trier of fact. That's what I said earlier. You should be able to, as it says, write professionally with facts. Facts. Because you know what will happen if you don't use facts? You will get impeached based on your perceptions. Should be unbiased, shouldn't be opinions. There are small portions where opinions might fit in, but that's generally for individuals who are providing testimony on as an expert. Correct dates, times, locations, we already covered that. So just remember, you must be able to document incidents that occur and have them accurately. Okay. I already talked about the reasons for that, so we'll skip over that. The final thing I'm going to say about this is that what it says in this last paragraph kind of says it all again. The need for effective professional communication does not only relate to the police, probation, corrections, but to every criminal justice professional. Critical, critical. As it says, the written reports are often the first and sometimes the only impression that you as a criminal justice professional can put on your supervisors, the judges, prosecutors, and the public. So it's important to be very, very accurate and truthful. Okay. Nonverbal communication. Now, what you have to be able to do is almost read a person, be able to recognize that there will be things that people will say, and there will be things that they don't say. Um, you have to make sure that you're understanding. That's because I do this on this with a person on the stand. When I was a police officer, I had to question individuals after giving them their rights if they were in custody, Miranda rights. I had to ask questions, and I could discern by paying attention to their body movements. For example, if they had their arms folded like their arms folded, or if they had their hand on their chin, then that meant that, oh, they're telling me they're either tired or not very much interested. If they're just constantly frowning, I'll ask them, are they in pain? But they're generally not. The point of the matter is that they can get offended, and you can utilize that information. I used to teach a course dealing with this, and I would talk about the example for nonverbal. Oh, by the way, back to verbal before I go to that. Officers, and I say this all the time, should avoid the use of slang and keep verbal communication short and simple. Do not, do not, do not ever allow yourself to get to the level where you use cuss words. Don't do that. It's unprofessional, and it is not good verbal communication. I don't care how bad that person is, they're still a human being. Um, you should treat people with the way that Joe Friday would treat a person being questioned. Do you know who Joe Friday? Do you know the name Joe Friday? You know who that is, or who that was? Yes. Okay. Dragnet, right? You remember Dragnet? Yeah. Yeah. You're probably too young to remember the TV show, or maybe you do remember the TV show. But there was a movie that was done with Tom Hanks. Uh, yeah, okay, and the Rockford Files, stuff like that. But the point of the matter is that if you listen to Joe Friday, who was a guy named Jack Webb back in the days when I was a kid, from the LA Police Department. They were very, they felt like, they were, people thought that they were being boring, but no, what they were doing was they were speaking to people, and they would maybe raise the level of their voice, but not to the yelling stage, and not do things that are outlandish, and things of that nature. But the point of the matter is that the idea was to get the facts. There's a technique of interrogation that's utilized that is around called good cop, bad cop. You ever heard of that one? Okay, so you know what that's about. That's when a person is being interrogated, and then there's one guy, and he's like up in his face and up in the face of the person and all over them, and then the other officer comes in like, oh, wait, back off, relax. Then they'll offer the person a cup of coffee or a cigarette or something, and they will kind of make it appear as if they're friends with that individual, but in reality what they're doing is roping them in. And so it's a plan way of doing it. But you have to be careful how you do it, though, because you can violate somebody's constitutional rights by uh, putting them in a coercive situation where you force the information out of them. You force it out of them. So, but anyway, uh, so it's important in your verbal communication that you um, do that in a very professional, respectful way. A person is not a piece of blank, okay? And I have to remind um, people that when there are police shootings and the person comes in and is charged with shooting or killing one of their colleagues, they have to really be careful not to get emotional about it, because if they do, they can mess up big time. And then whatever you do, don't do what Commander John Burge did. Have you guys ever heard me talk about John Burge? Have you heard me talk about John Burge? John Burge was a police commander in Chicago, and he was in what was called the Burnside District, or Area 2 homicide. And he was known for forcing confessions out of individuals using cattle prods, using they would even beat them on their body so that it didn't show up. They would, when I say cattle prod, they would put electricity to the genitals of these individuals. This happened in the 80s, by the way. Yeah, it happened in the 80s. And John Burge ended up being charged later and dismissed. He passed away a few years ago. He retired down in Florida. But you can do some research. Jonburge. That's how you spell his name. And so anyway, forcing information out of individuals. So you can't do that. You don't do that. Nonverbal communication, as it says, look at what it says, 93% of the information. Body language is so important. Facial expression, the tone of the voice, as I was talking about a minute ago. Read the language to indicate when a person is being deceptive or ready to take off. When I was teaching that class I was telling you about, I would ask my students, if you're out in the field and you're questioning a person, and you look at their eyes, and their eyes are looking over your shoulder or going from another angle away from you, you could be assured that they're either that first I said they're hiding something, but secondly, what it does say is that they are looking for a way to escape. You'll be surprised, even in handcuffs, people don't care. They'll take off ankle bracelets. They will hop. Trust me, we've seen it. Uh, all kinds of things. But as I said earlier, listening is critical. It's an active process, listening for the verbal cues and paying attention to the nonverbal cues. Finally, there are some barriers to communication, such as you might have some cultural issues. Maybe you don't speak the language that that person speaks. There may be some psychological issues that you're talking to a person who has psychological issues, or some physical barriers. Um, um, Lack of attention span, interest, or distractions, such as traffic, or the environment that you maybe are. Remember the argument that they tried to use as a defense attorney about Derek Chauvin, that he was distracted by the crowd. That's one of the reasons why he kept his knee on George Floyd's neck. You remember that argument? Yeah, which didn't fly very well. Yeah, right. Uh-huh. Yeah, you tell me, and I believe in Santa Claus too. But the point of the matter is that you have to be aware of the areas that you're operating in, understanding, give people a personal space, you know, handshake consequences of ineffective documentation, including that will lose your credibility and violate the suspect's rights. I talked about that earlier. So uh, you could lose a case, in short. If you don't speak the language, some people ask someone there to translate for them. I'm against that because of the fact that they could, if you don't know the language, Do you really know what they're saying to you? Do you really know? I don't think so. No, you don't. That's correct, Jennifer. Two capital letters. No way. And so you want to have someone who is able to understand what that person is saying, that speaks that language. And I also tell my students that the fastest growing population, bar none, in the United States is Hispanic and Spanish speaking people from all parts of the world. So it's worth learning some Spanish. I know a little poquito in Espanol. I know enough to listen, but if I really, really, really am in a situation where I had to deal with a person speaking Spanish, I would request backup or a person who's an interpreter to be able to do so. Um, so everybody working in criminal justice need to communicate with special populations, such as the hearing impaired, or individuals who are visually impaired, people who have mental issues or high on some kind of substance, and or culturally diverse, different cultures. Uh, Responses might mean different things to them, you know. So it's important to be aware of that. And then finally, we said this already as one of our transferable skills, criminal justice professionals must be digitally fluent. Everything's digital. To utilize technology, such as computers for research, report writing, and investigations, as well as updating the social media sites. Did you know we do a lot of investigations now and are solved by the social media sites of individuals? And find a lot of stuff that's going on. Um, Finally, effective communication can help an officer de-escalate volatile situations and build trust with the community as well. All right. So that's the importance of that. That's a big part of what I'm talking about tonight. All right. So some common barriers. We already kind of talked about that, so I won't spend a whole lot of time, but barriers to effective communication, it can be the language, you can get too emotional, the environment that you're in, um, physical, personal, perceptional, the gender. You got to be respectful to people from all backgrounds. Remember, I talked about this in diversity, people from LGBT to individuals who are not. You have to respect people. Semitic, you don't want to be anti-Semitic. You want to understand the culture of individuals. And so you have to be able to, as I said, deal with the language, the culture, and the sociological aspects of individuals that you deal with. And you have to be able to connect. That's the key thing. To overcome these, officers should become familiar with the culture in their community so they can interact respectfully with the members of the community, should understand the culture of the people that they are serving. Good old days, back in the days when they had community officers operating, which kind of has gone by the wayside in urban areas because of the size. But um, we were trained as law enforcement officers how to deal with individuals from various cultures and understand the way that people operated as well. Okay. Physical barriers. Often officers interview victims in an outside environment. Remember, I said whether it's rainy, cold. I mean, those things can determine how a person gives you information. If they're in a situation where it's uncomfortable, and you too taking the information, and it you can as it shows here, distracted by noisy traffic, barking dogs. I laugh because my dog is a little over a year old, and he barks, and we can hear him barking throughout the house, and it irritates us. And if I'm talking to my wife or trying to listen to something or trying to pay attention to uh, doing a lecture, I said, get the dog out because it can throw me off. Large groups of people, which that's kind of like what we were talking about a few minutes ago with the George Floyd situation. So you want to get people in a place where it's good to question them. For example, it says an officer who has been in the military may address fellow officers in a rigid, formal manner, making it hard to communicate with them. And they're not trying to be evasive, that's just how they are. Psychological barriers sometimes occur when officers are afraid or feel threatened. I was told by a Caucasian police officer um, that he was afraid of black males because black males are inherently violent. He was telling me that. Could you see the look on my face at the time when I heard that? I mean, could you imagine that? Could you imagine how stupid that was? I mean, that was like, yeah, yikes is right. You know, I feel like with Chris Rock talking to Jackie Chan. Nobody understand the words that come out of your mouth. Or either like what, or either like Scooby Doo. You said that. I can't believe you said that. You know, and you don't want to do that. You don't want to. Come on, let's let's move along, good people. Let's be professional. We can't be um, biased and reach the stage where you uh, want to know. And then you got to be careful about using language when you're talking to, like, for example, African American person. And you might do that with other minorities too. When you use that term, you people, that's an offensive term. When somebody says that to me, my antennas go up. It's like my hair stands straight up. It's like we're different. Well, yeah, we have differences, but hey, we all have red blood, or in the case, as my nurse friend reminds me, blue blood. I say, but I never see it in the body. So you know what I'm talking about. But excuse me, don't treat me like I'm a human being like you. Respect, uh, you know, it's not about who's got the money and who doesn't. Everybody um, is a human and deserves to be treated with respect and dignity. Okay, so you can goof up the whole communication process. Nobody want to hear you. Nobody want to even talk to you. Nothing. Listening, we already talked about that. Get to the point. You know, sometimes good stories will help in terms of responding. But listening. If you remember on my little mnemonic that I have, going back on the student lounge, and I have this word lawyers, and the L stands for listening, and you'll learn. Listening is so important. That's why I told somebody God gave us two ears and one mouth. Unfortunately, people want to use this more than this. And sometimes they use this and it's not connected to this, nor to the heart. So it gets to be pretty messed up there. But listening is a skill, and it'll elevate you if you're a good listener, and you can be wiped out and destroyed if you don't. Officers will sometimes hear the same stories or complaints many times during their shift. Too often, these officers will simply nod or even become impatient and try to push the person to tell a story, and they may not have it. They may miss an important point. So you don't want to interrupt somebody. You don't want to be in such a big hurry and those kind of things. All right, because something important might not come out. Language, we already talked about that. People speak different languages, and we already talked about dealing with that. Dealing with mental disorders, individuals, we run across that a whole lot. I was talking with someone the other day, and it was clear to me that they were speaking um, what we might say is a little off, but I still engaged them and spoke with them and listened to them and, operating with communicating with that individual. Um, People have all kinds of emotional issues, dementia, as well. Okay. So be aware of those kinds of things. Because remember, when you're out there, you're going to be doing some of that social scientific stuff as well. Sociology is very important to law enforcement officers. Sociological barriers, dealing with people from cultures that, like, some people don't understand why a person steal a loaf of bread to survive if they've never had to be in that position. But you understand dealing with those kind of situations. I've seen situations where police officers, rather than arrest somebody, they have actually uh, taken time themselves to take the person shopping and buy them things. You have to be careful though with that, that you don't do that with a person that's like a person asked me, "Hey, can I get a quarter?" I was on my way into court. "Can I get a quarter?" I said, "Yeah, okay, I'll give you a quarter." So I come back out, and then they said that's all they needed. So then I come back out again, and then when I come out of the building, that same person sees me again and says, "I need just a quarter." I said, "You said that to me last time," and then they ran. But those kinds of things. I said, "Well, I won't give you a quarter, but what I'll do is I'll take you in and get you something to eat." "Oh, I don't have enough time." "Yeah, right. Okay. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about." So you have to be able to deal with that and help people where they are. Okay. And that's uh, ways to break down the barriers and improve interpersonal communication involve showing interest in the speaker, number one, being an active listener, focusing on what is actually being said, make eye contact. Oh my God, that's one of the key things. Ask questions and show interest. And then this is some additional resources to help you out there in that. Okay. Written communication, we've already talked about that. So I won't spend time talking about that. Reports, mistakes, and what happens in situations like this. We've covered that very well. So that's it. I have no more, but um, any questions? No questions. Okay. Anything you want to know? Now you know me long enough to know I'm messing with you now. Lottery numbers. Oh, you're funny. Uh, I got you. But the lottery numbers for the day are found between 1 and 10. Some multiplied by 2, 3, 4, or 5. Okay. Oh, God. Somebody said, what's the lottery number for the day? The pick six is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's it. Or 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. But, okay. Yeah, I knew you were going to eventually get around to that. But give me a suggestion. Yeah. Okay, I'll use that. I was going to say written communication, but communication is good because, yeah, it covers both sides. Very good, Jennifer. That's actually what we've been talking about for the last hour or so. So, yes, communication. Give me that, and you will, you know, get all your points. Don't give me communion. you know, that's what I do in my other job. But communication, very important. Okay, well, um, I enjoy this lecture because the fact that it's all about the realities of reminding you why we are the way we are in school with you, with your grades, with your spelling, with your paragraphing, and all of that kind of neat stuff. But reminding you as well about all the things that go along with communication. Remember, um, communication is not good if it doesn't reach the other party. Then that's a lack of communication. So communication. So I'll see you next week at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time for week number 4. And enjoy your week. Have a fantastic week. Get those assignments in. If you have questions, which most of you won't, especially with this week's assignments, then um, get them in. I will be grading your assignments for week 2 by Friday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. So good night. Stay safe. Take care of yourself. You're welcome.